interview. Today we are going to be talking with Chiara. So she graduated from the Binge Eating Blueprint program a few months ago, and she just has an absolutely incredible transformation. And not just with her body and food, but with all areas of her life and really stepping into her power fully. And what I love about her story is she had tried so many things. She'd even been through a different, binge eating recovery type program prior to working with us. She'd done personal development. She really felt like she had tried it all. And she'd even tried to work through her limiting beliefs and so forth. And she came in a little fearful about that and fearful about the program being almost a repeat. And through her she showed up on every single call. She just fully dived in. She brought every fear to the calls. We worked through everything. And then she also applied and implemented everything we talked about. And she just had this beautiful journey where I literally feel like I saw a cocoon go into this beautiful butterfly. And I don't think a new person forms necessarily, but Chiara, I really do feel like you had a journey almost back to yourself and just developing that deep self-love and compassion and flow and ease with yourself and working through your fears and so forth. And, I know there's still more to go. We all have more of a journey to make, but your journey was such an incredible one to be a part of and to watch. So just wanted to say thank you for being here. I hope everyone listens to this full interview. I know there'll be some beautiful nuggets of wisdom in it. And, thanks, Chiara. Are you ready to jump in?
Yeah, wow, Brittany. What an intro. I appreciate it. It felt very heartful, and I'm already emotional over it. So I just appreciate you.
Yeah, no, you too. And I appreciate you taking the time for this because it's one of our biggest requests from people who aren't in the program, but more actually people who are, just wanting to hear the realness of someone's journey and what it looks like, because it's not a linear process for anyone, and it's so different for everyone. So let's jump in, and let's just get started. So first question for you is really, if you could, just kind of paint a picture of what did life and your relationship with your body and food look like before you reached out for your call with us? So, before the program, before you reached out, kind of where were you at? What were you struggling with? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, to put it simply, it was just a huge, huge struggle. And I was at my wit's end and exhausted because I felt like I had literally giving it everything I had, but it was just, it's like shooting in the dark because I didn't have a direction, and I was just like exhausting myself. So yeah, reaching out to you guys, I was hoping that I would have that direction, that guidance, that support. Let me think through. I guess, I was just thinking about it the other day. Probably, my life up until that point had been trying diet after diet and like vigorous exercise program, one after another. And I just felt like I was just trying everything. It wasn't working. It was getting worse. And then probably 4 years ago, I made this promise to myself that like no matter what, I absolutely would never give up on myself. And I see that because prior to it, it was just, I would go through a wave of, these waves of trying my hardest to get my body where I guess I accepted it. But I would exhaust myself. And then after a while, I would almost just like give up, and I would go crazy. Like this is when the binge would come on. And I would just eat everything I wouldn't allow myself to do on that diet. I would stop exercising because I exhausted it, and it just was wave after wave, because after a little bit I'd say, you know what, I got that motivation again. I can like push through it. I see all these other people online that are able to achieve what I want, so it's possible. I just have to work harder. So it would be wave after wave of that, and that was probably for 2 years after that point where it was wave of wave, and then about 4 years ago is when I said I won't ever give up anymore. I'll just like push through it and not have those waves. So really what it ended up being is just trying even harder on new diets and harder on workout programs and just being more exhausted. And that went on for like 2 years. It was like one thing wouldn't work. The next week I would try something else and do that for like 2 or 3 weeks. And every time I was like, this is it. This is the answer. This is going to work. and it never did. But yeah, so I did that for 2 years, and then finally I was like, this isn't working. I need to really just quit dieting. Like I started to hear people talking about their freedom from all of this, and I was just like, it's interesting. It's the complete opposite, I feel like, of what I've heard up until that point in society, where it's just like, you have to diet, you have to exercise, you have to eat clean. And I'm doing air quotes here because it's like cut out everything under the sun. So I was intrigued by it. Like you mentioned in the kind of intro, I did try another program, and it was this emotional eating, like ditching the diet aspect of things. And it opened my eyes to this mind shift that there's a whole other way to go around this, and it's that self-love, self-acceptance, and working through those limiting beliefs. But the issue, I think, why that didn't succeed for me is a couple things. One being that I didn't have the tools to cope with emotions that came up, and that's a huge trigger for me. And so it'll just knock me out for weeks. I guess I'm just an emotional person. But so when the times got tough, I would just kind of shut down. And ultimately, that's why I kind of quit that program, because I was just like, got into a funk, and I felt like there was no progress, and I was freaking out, and it was just getting worse, and just kind of propelling on itself there, snowballing. But the other thing about it is it didn't have that focus. It didn't have, I guess, a little bit of a head nod to that brain science, but you really dive into it, Brittany, like in your program. It's such a huge factor. So ultimately, I'm really glad that I got that out of your program. But I guess, yeah, that's kind of what led me to you. It was just, I started learning that there's a huge aspect of the way we think, our mindsets, and these, like, the brain science behind it. And I was very intrigued when I found out that your program speaks to that, teaches on it. So ultimately, that's kind of why I turned to you.
Yeah, so great. And just thank you for sharing that. I think there's so many little nuggets of wisdom there, right? And the big thing to take away, in my opinion, is how a lot of other methods that you had tried were all that forced and that working harder. And I remember even when you came into this program, I feel like a lot of people do this, and I would do it too. I would have done it too, which is bring that almost, you're releasing dieting, but you're bringing that almost diet mentality into the personal development type work. Like, I got to do this perfect, and I got to hit this, and it creates that anxiety and that, like, need for getting it perfectly right and so forth. And I know that was a big thing that really shifted for you throughout the program. So yeah, I want to talk about that in a little bit. But before we go into, and I have more questions, you mentioned the brain science and so forth of our program. I definitely want to touch on, like, what stood out to you and what really were your big ahas and what made it different. But before I do that, I want to, we just talked about where you were, so I'd love to kind of hear now where you are and just what your relationship with your body and food looks like, what your life looks like, just kind of where, then to now, like, what's now look like now that you're graduated. And I think how many months out are you? I should have checked this out before we jumped on the call. Is it about 3 months?
I'm laughing because I don't even know. It probably 2 or 3 months. Yeah, I probably should have looked myself. Yeah.
I was thinking 2, and then, like, time flies, so I could see maybe 3. So yeah, we'll say 2 to 3 months out.
Because I think I graduated like in November. Maybe it was 3 months.
Gosh, time flies. Well, okay, so 2 to 3 months ish. So what do things look like for you now?
So I think I want to start off by saying that a point I kind of failed to mention before, and I think you even touched on it, was just that I was forcing everything. And a big part of it was I was literally looking, like, everywhere for my answer, except digging deeper into, like, what tools I could explore myself more. So I think that that's kind of how I was before, but now that I've gone through your program, when I feel a certain way, when I come across a block, I look into myself. I might have, obviously, the tools that you gave me, but I'm not looking externally for my answer anymore, and I think that's just huge. So I'm able to cope with a lot of my triggers that used to like just knock me down for a long time. So I guess one thing is you've taught me how to process my emotions, and that was something I kind of wasn't like expecting. But I think that that's a huge part of it for me, you know, being a trigger, I guess. But another big thing is I'm probably a little bit more of a late bloomer in this respect, but I'm really starting to feel my body's signals. So again, I think that kind of stems back to looking outside for my answer prior to your program, but now I look internally. So if I'm feeling irritable, like I'm snapping at people, it's usually one or two things. Like I'm either really hungry or I didn't eat something that ended up making me feel good. Usually it's like too much sodium in it or something like that. And in the moment, I ate it because I wanted it, I guess. But afterward, I realized I'd just be really irritable and not feel good. So things like that, I'm starting to really notice the signs that my body's giving me. And then when I do have these, you know, if I have an urge to eat something or whatever, because I'm emotional or what, I don't know. Now I question it. I ask myself, like, am I hungry? Which most times that's what it is. And I just would have gave in or whatever, ate the thing that I wanted, I guess, like chocolate or whatever it was. But now I sit down and I make that meal and I satisfy myself. Or if it's something that's like stressing me out, I stop myself, like, am I actually hungry? No, so it's probably something else. And then I address that problem. So, I mean, I guess the big thing is you've taught me how to, and it encouraged me to find these answers and really listen to what my body's saying. So I guess that's the big thing.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. I love it. And I think that piece of looking within is so important because that's just what we do. I mean, I remember in my struggle, you know, not knowing what to do and Googling, you know, I've been through nutrition school and I'm still Googling like carb cycling and God knows what else about what diet or what exercise I needed to do. And I mean both physical exercise and personal development type exercises. And there was just this aspect of, you know, I wouldn't rely on myself for answers. I'd text my coach immediately, like, what do I do? How do I fix this? When his answers would always be, well, how do you think you should fix it? Or whatever that might be. I hate using the word fix, but you know what I mean. So I think that's just really powerful to take back that, you know, you are the source of it all. And I do think that's a big part of what, I don't think I know, that's a big part of the undertone of the program is kind of peeling back the layers of that societal conditioning and expectations and searching outside yourself and reminding yourself, like, you really know. You always know. YAK is an acronym we use a lot. So yeah, I think that's really powerful. And I love, you mentioned late bloomer, but I really think it's an important piece to highlight is the signals, your body signals. So that comes at different stages for everyone. And if someone's survival mechanisms are super activated for a while, it might take a little bit longer. But when it happens, that switch does happen where you're starting to actually want things that nourish you and make you feel good. And I feel like even if you felt like it came a little late, so to speak, you know, you're kind of in that place where you can tap into those internal cues and listen to your body in a more balanced way, which I think is really powerful.
Absolutely. And I will say, I mean, I thought a little bit about it, like why didn't some of those things kick in a little sooner. But I mean, I think it's almost like I was getting all these amazing tools and really exploring all these other aspects of my life during your program. And it was just like, I guess I got excited about so much, you know, so it was a little bit hard for me to kind of focus on how I was feeling. But I do think a lot of that was my own circumstances because what I was going through in my life at the time was very challenging. So I think it kind of had a hue over the program too. So it's probably going to be so different for everybody. So I guess what I was focusing on in the group at the time is what I needed. But now that I'm like graduated and passed the program, things have settled down. And because of implementing so many of your tools, I can't tell you how much has changed my life. But now things have calmed down. I can hear myself better, you know, those signals and such. And I think that's why finally now I'm starting to hear it. I'm starting to be able to listen. Like now I wake up in the morning and oftentimes I just want like a smoothie to start off with, like something really fresh. And I might have wanted that here and there, but like I want salads now all the time, and I can turn down chocolate, I can turn down ice cream, not because I'm restricting. It's just literally I don't have it. I don't want it. Like at the time I'm like, gee, that wouldn't really feel that good if I ate that. And I'm questioning again that like I'm stopping, giving myself some time to really reflect on it before I eat it and say, well, gee, how's that going to feel after I eat it? And that's been a huge thing for me too. And I guess I've been practicing that a lot more in the last couple of weeks. And it's making me really excited. You know, it gives me even more hope that I'm definitely heading in the right direction. Obviously I knew this before, but it's nice to have that reassurance.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And it is such a journey, and everyone looks so different, and everyone comes into the program in a different place of their life. And really, the tools you learn in the program can go out into all areas of life. So I usually ask this question a little later, but since we're kind of talking about all areas of life, I'd love to just hear from you on that, because I do really, I know that you had shifts, such big shifts around your fears and around your limiting beliefs, especially. Like you did such deep work in the middle of the program when we went into those limiting beliefs and so forth. So beyond just food in your body, what opened up for you in other areas of life, or maybe some unexpected outcomes that you got from the program, just like in your life in general, whether it be fear, anxiety, something you were pursuing, anything like that?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's all for you.
Okay.
For sure. So a huge one was just, I guess I went into it very fearful that like I would try once again very hard and it just wouldn't amount to anything. And I think part of it, and honestly, like probably halfway through the program, I realized that like I had a fear of fear. Like I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but like one of my limiting fears that I had to work through was like being able to sit with my fear. And like even now I can feel like these emotions kind of like building up a little bit, because I don't know how, like, I guess I have like the urge to cry a little bit when I think about it, because like it was such a no-no. Like it was something that like I absolutely never thought that I could do, is like to meet those feelings where they were and sit with them. And like, I know it sounds like a little ridiculous, but like it felt like it would destroy me. Like I would fall into like this abyss and never be able to come out. And it sounds so dramatic, but I'm sure like some of you have those fears that like are just so overwhelming. So halfway through the program, one of those things, it was probably the first one I tackled, was literally just sitting with my fear and letting myself experience it. And what I found is that I was able to sit with it, and then I was able to come out of it. And that was like, it kind of blew my mind, because I'd never been able to do that in the past. It always spiraled into like this crazy binge. But I think it was just like, I know it's like a fear of fear, but for once it was like I wasn't afraid of that fear. And I think a huge part of it was just knowing that you and the rest of the team were there to catch me. You were there to support me if I found myself in a place that I couldn't pull out of. And I believed in it. I believed in you guys. And I think part of it was having, the weekly calls. I don't know if it was something you answered for me or something you answered for somebody else, but it made me trust that I can dig deep. I have the support, and you won't let me stay there. Like, I know it's like a tether, I guess. So now that I know that, it's such an awakening, I guess. And now that I know that I can go to those dark places, sit with those fears, think through them, feel through them, work through them, and still come out of it. And that was such a huge thing for me to experience. So yeah, I guess that was one of them. Remind me. So, and then I know you said, where else is it? Okay, so the other one's anxiety. I was going through a lot of anxiety with my career, and just feeling pretty unfulfilled and just stuck and overwhelmed and all this stuff. In other areas of my life too. But I think towards the end of the program, one of the modules was working through and processing emotions. And I think, again, that was one of the things I swear, I'm like, I wish somebody had taught me this when I was little. I'm almost 30 now, so 29 years of my life, I've never been taught, or I don't know, I've never looked into how to process those emotions. So I've been running from my emotions like my whole life. So and I remember telling you, like, I'm so scared to like feel these things, this anxiety, because I'm afraid if I welcome it in, it's not going to leave. But again, I had your support, so I had that courage, I guess, to go through it, and I was blown away that I was able to feel the things that have been sitting there and waiting for me to feel, and I was able to work through them. So huge, huge, huge thing for me. I still practice it daily. I practiced it probably right before this call because something came up today.
That's so awesome.
It helps me with so many things in my life, and I want to I'm like shouting off the rooftop, like, feel your feelings, like, and I think I've told you this before. I just feel like, I don't know, like binge eating was just like this thing that just was created from me not being like in my power, not being aligned with my true self. And I think part of it was like I was just afraid to face these things that were keeping me from my true self. So that's anxiety. I guess the other thing that you talked about was just, I don't know, progression of life. But so I guess once, I think it was my graduation call with Stella, I was like, guess what? I want to change careers, and I'm finally like allowing myself to do it. It's always been like a question that I had asked myself, like, gee, am I really in the right career? Like, I'm a designer. I've grown up so artistic, just always drawing, like always very crafty. And I found myself in this career, and it's always been a challenge. I'm like going against the grain, and I couldn't figure out why. And I think it's not fulfilling, and it's just not, maybe, I guess, what I'm here to do. So I stopped with that a little bit, and really what it came down to is I feel like I'm meant to encourage people, help people. So I've really taken a hard look at that and ask myself, you know, am I getting that out of designing, and am I getting that out of my current job? So I made the decision to switch careers, and this is going to be, I feel like, a marathon thing, not a sprint. Like, it's going to take time for me to pursue that new career path and helping people and encouraging people. But I'm going to do it a little bit at a time here. I'm already pursuing things to get my foot in that door, and helping like my friends and family in ways like I'm putting myself out there and sharing my story, and just like not hoping, but I'm using it to, I guess, express myself and help others. So that was just such a huge thing for me to like finally allow myself to make a big change like that. And I am not a person who likes change, so it's huge for me.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I have so many things to say based on what you just shared. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think, oh gosh, where do I start? You know, the piece about the feeling your emotions, I think that's just so important, and the being in your power to feel your fears and so forth. And realizing that, like, you got to experience firsthand that they weren't going to take you out. You know, you're going to come right out on the other side once you actually gave them a chance to process. And that's the problem. Most people that are binge or emotional eating, you reach the heightened emotion, and then you do set activity to numb it out. And then the emotion never gets processed. You never learn what there is to learn. You never have the gift from the emotion. And these things stay spiraling for 29 years or whatever it might be, right? Mine did too. And then say someone does this stop binge eating, but they haven't worked through those emotional things and fears yet, they just switch things. So it's like people go through their life bouncing from, I don't necessarily think binge eating is addiction, but I'm going to use the word for this, bouncing from addiction to addiction, or, you know, binge eating to scrolling on social media for 4 hours to procrastinate what they know they're meant to do in this world, or whatever it might be, right? And so I think what's really powerful for you is you not only shifted from the binge eating, but you went in and did the work to undo that deep stuff. And so as you're stepping out, you're going to be able to recognize that self-sabotage. And, even once you've done the work, self-sabotage comes up, but now you have the tools to really recognize that, which is powerful. So I know the program helps lead you there. I know we help support you. I know those are all great parts of the process, but I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you've done. The limiting beliefs and fears are not easy. Someone could go through the program 5 times and decide not to do that part of it. And I personally think that's the most profound part of it and the most bang for the work you're doing, right? Like that's the work that's going to ripple out into every area until the end of time.
So true.
Yeah. And so I just want to acknowledge you for having the courage to do it. I think you can sidestep it or you can kind of do it half-assed, and I don't think you did it half-assed at all. Like you really went in and did it, and I want to acknowledge you for that. And for anyone that's in the program listening to this, I also want to say one thing that Chiara did. I said it in the introduction. No matter how much fear you had, no matter what came up, no matter what you resisted, you got on the calls and you expressed it. Even if you didn't have a question, you're like, I don't even have a question, but this is what's going on. And, of course, we could dive into it. And then you took what was said on the call. You might not even have left in a good place after the call, but you took the information and then you either sat with it, you explored it, you journaled, you spent your time with that breakthrough on the call, and you implemented, and you got the shift. And then the next call you came back and updated us and let us know what was going on. And I think that is why we were able to be there for you so much, is you were plugged in too, and we could see what was going on. And I always say to everyone, like, we will move heaven and earth. I will get you whatever resource you need. We will do whatever we need to do as long as I know what you need. And one thing that you did was you showed up fully no matter what mental state you were in. Like, you came and you showed up. And I do think that that's why we were able to meet you and support you in the way that we did, and why you had that feeling of community and support wasn't just one-sided on our side. You showed up in the group, you commented for other girls, like, you held that space for the support too, and just through your courage you made it easier for us to support you. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. I think just everything you did was so incredible.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate it. And I think part of it was I was just like so freaking exhausted from trying so hard. So I was all in. I was like, this is it, my last big push. After this is literally like, I don't know what else to do. So I knew that I had to give it 100% and try just my darndest to like really put it all on the table, no matter how painful it is, how upsetting it is, or what. I just needed to be completely honest with you guys and, share what I was struggling through, even if it felt shameful. But the cool thing is like everybody on the call experiences it too. So it was such a unique experience because like I wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily sharing those things with friends or family because they wouldn't quite understand it. Yeah, they want to support me, but they might not be able to. They've never experienced that before. So like I said, it was just, there might have been shame or what. I've held this in for so long, but I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was exhausted and tired, and I wanted this to be the end all be all. And I think you even opened on my first call that I came to. Maybe it could have been my second, but I pretty much just told you, like, I'm so scared that it's not going to work and that I will have no other resources to turn to. And you pretty much told me whether, like, and it's like that quote, like, whether or not you believe you'll succeed or you'll fail, like, you're right. So, and you that was really important for me to hear. Like, if I don't think this is going to work for me, it's not going to work for me. But if I take this is your last shot, this is the only thing you have left to try and make it work. And I tried my hardest to do that. And I do feel like now I have all the tools. Like you said, I'm not perfect. There's still things to work through. But I'm not looking elsewhere anymore. I'm using your tools and I'm implementing them, and I think that's all I need now.
Yeah, so great. And there will be a time where, like, the next level of growth opens up for you, and whether it's with us and our support programs and our ongoing programs and so forth, or whether it's going to the event that I get to see you at soon, which is so fun to see you in person, there's going to be other things that sing to you that you're open to now because you're not in that compulsive struggle, and that's such a big part of the process. And one thing I want to highlight, too, for anyone listening, whether you're in the program, not in the program, what makes the difference of things working is that line in the sand moment. And I remember your first call. I remember nearly all the conversations I have, and I don't understand how I remember them, but there's a few I remember very, very vividly. Your first call, I remember vividly about the fear, the intense fear, and the uncertainty, and just the worry, kind of like waiting for that aha to happen. But you heard the first few videos, and it didn't happen. You were worried, and there was just is it right for me? And which I commend you for saying that, because most people wouldn't even say that, and then they have that feeling running in the back of their mind the whole program, and they're never in all the way. They're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I feel like a huge defining point for everyone that's really, really successful is that line in the sand. This is it. I got this. I have faith in this. They have me. We're doing this. We're partnering on this. Whatever happens, we're going to make this work. That just huge commitment, belief in yourself, belief in the process, I think is really what makes the difference, because it's going to impact how you approach something if you don't believe that it's possible to break free. You're not no one who would go all the way in if you don't believe that this is the answer to really freedom. And so I think that's one thing. You shifted very fast between, it was either week 1 or week 2. I think it was your week 2, and you hadn't dived into module 2 yet, but maybe it was your second call. And that the shift between that call and the next was halfway in, halfway out. You were doing everything, but you weren't mentally all the way in. And then once you mentally stepped in, it was boom, night and day difference. Really, really awesome stuff.
And I appreciate that. You said something that kind of stood out to me, and I think it was during that call. And you said that you commend me for bringing it up, and you said most people would just keep that to themselves, whether or not the program was right for them, or I was struggling because I hadn't had that aha moment that I told myself I would have right off the bat, which is, I don't know. Again, that's setting these timelines that are unrealistic. So I went into it thinking, immediately this is going to be the program, I'm going to know it, all this stuff, and not that I doubted the program, but I doubted my ability, I guess. But what I appreciate is and I think you've said it, I don't know if it was in a welcome video or what it was, but you pretty much said that, in order to work through these things, you need to shine the light on them. So I would encourage people that, if you have these thoughts, share them. It's going to be very hard to, admit it, that you have these thoughts and, these doubts or whatever, but please just share them, because then you're addressing it, you're putting it, that light on. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable to admit something like that, but it was night and day. You were able to say, yeah, Chiara, you have those doubts, but here's some things you could work on. And it, like you said, the next call I was completely different. So yeah, I just really encourage people, use the resources, talk to people. This is your chance to really put it out there.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. I love it. So much value so far. So okay, awesome. Just a couple more questions for you. So what do you think made, I know we've kind of covered this a little bit, but what do you feel made the Beating Binge Eating Blueprint different than what you had tried before? What was the big difference? I know we've touched on support, right, and we've touched on your big mindset shift and so forth. Anything else or anything in those departments that, I know you mentioned the brain science too, so it sounds like there's so many different things, but what was really it for you that was wow, this is resonating, this feels right, I'm in the right place, I'm doing this? What was that difference for you?
So, I think I've kind of talked about a handful of them, but one maybe that I haven't spoken on yet was that brain science. And ultimately that's kind of why I signed up for this to begin with, because nobody else that I'd seen was talking about it. And I thought that it was very important. And like you said, I had, up until this point, tried very hard to educate myself on binge eating and, what I was going through. And I was trying desperately to find the answers. And some things kept on pointing back to brain science and these patterns in our minds, these thought patterns and mind shifts. So when I heard, and learned that you focus on that throughout the entire program, I was yep, that's it. I'm doing it. So that was I guess, among other smaller things that are slipping my mind at the moment, it would be that brain science. And I think the really cool thing is like you really focus on it in the first couple of weeks, and then for the remainder of the time, like it's still in the back burner. Like you've said it before, you ask a bunch of questions, not just for, just for giggles, but it's to reinforce these patterns in our minds. So I had this like shift during the program. It's like, gee, the coursework is so incredibly important because it's reinforcing these new patterns, these new thoughts. And you say the more that you focus on something, the deeper it's engraved in I guess your mind, your thoughts and all that. So I think a huge thing was like cutting out the negative talk. I finally got to a point in the middle of the program, as one of the modules that was like self-acceptance, and it was absolutely huge for me. I say that with everything I mentioned. The entire program was huge for me. I literally can say that about like all the modules. But I finally got a grasp of that self-acceptance. And it was, like you said, just it's just that repetitiveness. But it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like, gee, we've gone over this 4 times already. Like it's built in to the program. It's underlying. You don't really notice it. I noticed it probably just because of, I noticed it maybe more so after the fact, and maybe towards the end. I'm like, oh, gee, like I kind of noticed there's a theme here to get your brain to, I guess, accept the new patterns. Yeah. So I was just very impressed with it. And Brittany, you really know your stuff. It sounds like you've gotten just a lot of time that you put into the courses, and I love that you can explain it all on detailed and scientific levels, because I find that stuff just fascinating. So, I don't know what else to really say about it. It was just a cool thing that I hadn't seen anybody else really doing.
Yeah. Wow. Just thank you. Thank you. That's just, how do I just compare? I guess, like, how when you feel seen, so I just feel like the program was seen, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
So because people they don't realize what's underneath a lot of what's designed in the program. I think you, of course, realize from the content and stuff, the themes and the mood, but no one really understands why things are structurally there the way they are, and why I think like every question is asked in a certain way to reinforce a certain thing. And you're so right. It is laden in the front with the objective piece, the scientific piece, because what I found is that's what gives people the belief in the process. You can't really argue with the facts, So you can argue with self-love, body love, acceptance, limiting beliefs. Like, you can kind of argue with that when you haven't had a chance to see the results in your life, but you cannot argue with actual science and like the physiological nature, and also the nature of the habit of behavior change that you learn. Like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And you have that like tangible facts to kind of combat your irrational fears. I don't mean yours specifically, anyone.
Yeah.
And all of our fears are somewhat irrational unless they've actually been harmed or in danger, right? A lot of those fears are made up from societal conditioning and so forth. And I find it helps to have that piece on the front end to like see the light at the end of the tunnel really quickly, or to just really blow up the tunnel in general, and start connecting back to your power and get you those wins on the front end fairly quickly with the body and food piece. And then what we do is we open up the deeper stuff that actually makes the transformation last, and you're open to it at that point because you've had those wins from the objective piece on the beginning. And then you're right, I do trickle in all that brain science and those tactics through the back end of the program, but it's not in your face as much. It's kind of like we lay the groundwork, and then it's kind of trickled in. And then I love that Module 7 really sticks out to around the emotions, because we do really bring it back there. And I think that's part of the reason why it gives people power to explore their emotions, is they see it again in black and white. By that point, I would love to put that at the beginning of the program, because I think it's really powerful, but I don't necessarily think you have to have a lot of trust in us, in the program, in yourself.
That's so true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to sit with your fear or to sit with your emotions. And, when I first started coaching and we would do a lot of that emotional work on the front end, people would run and binge, because you hadn't
Yeah.
gotten those tools to interrupt the patterns yet. And so you kind of just capitalized on the process beautifully, and I just want to thank you for that. And it just shows how much you really dived into the work. So that's awesome.
Definitely. I appreciate it. I feel like there's just so much to say, but yeah.
I know. And we've already been talking so long. So I do have 2 more questions, and really I just want to, this is more for the women in the program, and hey, people who aren't in the program, this will benefit them too, but I want to bring a level, you've been so real and vulnerable, so it's not like we have to bring more realness, this has been a really real call, but like, there's struggles too, right? There's twists and turns and ups and downs in the process, and I just want to, I want to ask you about that, like, what is, either a few struggles or just even your biggest struggle, and kind of how did you turn that around for people that might be in the trenches with this right now and hearing all this awesome stuff that you're saying, but they're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so far away from that. Like, I can't imagine sitting with my fear or whatever that might be. Do you have any struggle that stuck out to you, and then maybe just what gave you what the aha was or the solution that you used to kind of turn that around?
Yeah, so let me think through this one, because I feel like I've got kind of 2 answers. One being just the ability to address and sit with those limiting beliefs. That was like a huge struggle for me. And like I would sit there and like just thinking about diving into it, like I said, like going and sitting in that dark place for a moment and like being with the fear, like it would just make me sob, like uncontrollably ugly cry. Like, so just being able to, I don't know, just the thought of going to those places was a struggle for me. But ultimately, I think I've touched on it probably already on this call, but like just having the support from you guys and knowing you'll catch me if I fall, you have my back, that was huge. So I was fine. I was able to face those things. And now, like, it's crazy to look back and like, if I have a fear like that, well, I shouldn't say just a fear, but if I have a limiting belief, like, obviously it's believing, and it's difficult to work through, but I would say it's not like, it's not a complete standstill for me anymore. It's not like something that I can't face. And I almost want to say it's easy now, but I don't know if that's necessarily always true, but it's like, it's, I don't know, just so much easier to go to those places and work through them. And maybe it's because I've addressed the hardest, biggest ones during the group, and since then it's just kind of smaller ones. But whatever it is, I think that was a huge struggle for me. And I think you mentioned it in the last question, but like when people have those fears and those emotions, they just go running and hiding and binging. And that's part of why the previous program I tried didn't work for me, or I should say I didn't work for it, or whatever the case may be, but I ran and binged, and it was such a drastic binge that lasted months, and I gained back all the weight I lost and more. And I was then, she's like, can I even face these fears? They're that big. But, that was just a big struggle. So early on, I was able to face those fears, sit with them, work through them. So my other thing that I struggled on would be really, I guess, learning how to listen to my body and feed it enough. And, like, in order to get those biological, like, responses to binge to quiet down. So that was something that, like, I know that I would probably say the majority of people are able to, like, hack that right away. But I feel like everybody is so different. And for me, I guess, like, I almost say, like, I was able to attack, like, the emotional aspect of the program so much easier than the physical side of things. But for most people, it was the other way around. So, I mean, I'm accepting that, like, it's something that I struggle with a little bit, but I don't know. I see glimpses. I shouldn't even say glimpses. Like, I see it already improving. So I think, like, a big thing is, like I said, just learning how to nourish myself enough to get the urges to stop has been the big struggle. But even now, I'm like, I mean, it sounds, I don't know, like I told you, I'm a bit of a late bloomer when it comes to this, but, like, probably the last couple of weeks especially, I'm in an I'm in like a situation where I'm more relaxed. I can take the tools and implement them kind of freely and leisurely. So I'm finally at the point where like I'm able to sit down with my feelings, feel my body out, ask it what it wants. And if I don't even have like the right answer, what I want to eat in the moment, I'm able to look around the room, and if there's something that I probably would have naturally gravitated towards in the past, let's just throw it out there, like pizza or something. So I see pizza, and I ask myself, like, okay, well, how am I going to feel after I eat it? And then that's what I kind of base that decision off of. So I'll look around the room and say, how will I feel after I eat that? And it might become easier in time, but it's not even that hard right now, but it's cool because I actually feel my body's response to it. Like ice cream. Like my fiance asked me if I wanted a bowl of ice cream, and I thought about it, and I was like, gee, right now I feel a little bit irritable. I think it's gonna make the sugar in it is probably gonna make me feel worse and on edge, and I'm gonna be going to bed soon. I don't want to feel gross when I go to bed. And at the beginning of the program, I had to have a bowl of ice cream every single night because it was just that urge to have it would not quiet down. So yeah, that was a huge struggle for me to, I guess around the physical ideas of food and nourishing my body and whatnot, but I feel it's finally starting to sink in, and I'm starting to see my body respond to it. So yeah, I've got more work to do, or I should say give it more time maybe, but I'm definitely starting to see that it's working.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And I think it's just important to bring a level of real, you not that you haven't been real, you've been so vulnerable and real, but bring a level of just, I guess, reality is a better word to it. It's a journey, and we're constantly evolving, and things are changing. And as women especially, our hormones are changing every month. What our body needs changes day to day, year to year, month to month, all these things. And it's just the ability to be able to check in with yourself and is so powerful, and not be terrified that you're going to get something wrong or do something the wrong way, or the impact of X on your body or whatever that is. Having just kind of that ease with it is so powerful. So I'm happy that that's starting to come to you. And I love how you mentioned, you did have, I'm not a backwards journey at all, but a different journey with the program, and you had these massive emotional shifts. But what's cool is now you're in this grounded, centered place to do the deeper physical work, and now you're seeing just everything, the results in all areas of life. So that's just so awesome. So cool. Really cool. So last question, and this is more for anyone in the program. If you just have words of wisdom, words of advice, how to get the most out of the program, what, now that you're out of it, right? You've had time to process the transformation and so forth. What would you just tell everyone to how to get the most out of the program, or any advice for really just diving in?
Yeah. So I think, and I touched on it earlier, but one of the biggest things that have helped me is literally just being transparent with the way I've been feeling, and the thoughts that I'm experiencing in the program. So just being in the program, having you, Brittany, there, and the other, the other teammates and such, and everybody in the community, they are a resource to pull from. And this is your chance to dive into those areas and having that safety net of people to fall back on and probe for answers or questions or whatever you have. Use it, be open, be just transparent, be honest. Be as honest as you can with yourself even. And that was something that was definitely hard for me to kind of face. For me, one of the things that come up is when I said about changing careers, it was a huge source of anxiety for me, but I had to be honest with myself, is this really the right direction? There was a lot of fear around that. I'm disappointing people. Gee, I went through 4 years of school for it and have debt, and how's it going to be to change direction? So, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that this is these tools can really be applied to any part of your life. And obviously the binge eating is a huge, huge thing that you're focusing on, but use it to your advantage, reach out, get these resources. You have them at your fingertips, and please just use them. So I guess that's like the one thing. The other thing I was thinking about before this call, and it's kind of cool, but I was like, how would I sum up the program? And I feel like it, let's say your journey is like you're in this maze, and you're trying to find your way to the other side and out of it. And I just feel like, yes, you can find the exit at the other end, but you will be in the maze for a long while, and you're going to be coming up to dead ends, and you'll find like areas that's working, but I'm not really sure if I'm heading in the right direction. But I feel like, and this might sound silly, but I feel like Brittany has like the map, and she's like viewing down it and saying, okay, well now take your left, and it's right ahead, take your right. And I just feel like you're directing us, like you know how to get out of the maze, you know what works, and you're going to show us like the most direct way to get there. And there's all these other paths we can take that kind of ultimately get us to that exit, of this maze, but you're there to direct and support us and like kind of give us the cheat sheet of like how to overcome all of this. So yeah, I guess that's really it.
Oh, wow.
I was gonna say, and like,
okay.
just I like wrote this down on like a little post-it note, but like literally, you have no idea how much this is gonna change your life if you let it. If you dive deep into all the different areas, all the different modules, like soak it up, implement it in your life, and it will make huge changes. And that's the last point I wanted to make there.
Yeah, Chiara, I've teared up about 8 times in this interview. I think you're amazing. Thank you. The maze analogy is incredible. My mind just randomly comes up with analogies. It's like I'll be mid-story and just be like, oh, it's just like this, and I'll have never said the analogy before. And I love them. I think they linguistically they help the brain kind of register the experience when you link it to something familiar. And I can, like, as you were saying that, I can visualize it, like looking down and like pointing someone in the directions. And also I don't work with anyone if I don't have faith that I know that I know that they can, and I know how to get them to that other end of the maze clearly. Like I know from point A to point B how to get them there, and like how to facilitate that space for them to kind of find their own inner journey and lead themselves there as well. And so that analogy is really beautiful, and I've never heard anything like that, and I appreciate it. It's like I could visualize it as you were talking about it, and it just really resonates. So thank you so much. I think
Of course.
Yeah, I just think there's so many nuggets of wisdom in this that are going to help so many people by listening to this, and I think it's incredible that, as you want to do this career change and so forth, things are showing up in your experience where you get to, even before the big career change happens, where you get to help others. And this interview is one of those things. I know people are going to listen to this, and it's going to resonate. It's going to keep them stepping forward and keep them moving forward, and like have them embark on a journey of their own, even if it's not my program, whatever they're kind of, wanting to do. So yeah, thank you, Chiara. And I've told you a million times how proud I am of you and how awesome it's been to work with you.
Thank you. And I feel the same way. I'm just like, I don't know. Our energies resonate, and I just really appreciate it and how much you put yourself out there in your program, and it really shows that you care for everybody. So I'm so thankful that I was led to your program, and then I got the chance to work with you.